So our next presenter is Jason Knobloch. He's going to be talking about working with developers for growth in rural areas. So Jason Knobloch has been in the water industry since 2003, in which time he has obtained multiple water and wastewater licenses and has served as general manager of different rural utilities. He holds a bachelor's degree in management and associate's degree in information technology. Jason currently serves as the deputy executive director, and where he continues his passion to help utilities across the state. Please welcome Jason Knobloch.
All right, good afternoon. So if you've been to one of our other conferences at TRWA, I'm actually reusing the same presentation where we talk about working with developers. TRWA worked on trying to put together a toolkit, a packet, some kind of starter templates for utilities that are now seeing this growth. We're seeing it all over the place. Utilities that had 500 now have 5,000 connections. The larger ones are growing at an even more rapid pace, but as we're starting to see it in the really small areas, they don't really know where to start. I heard a utility tell me the other day, we're growing like crazy. We had 30 connections last year. Yep, growing like crazy. And then the other people are saying that we have new subdivisions coming in at 1,000 or 2,000 at a time. But whenever you have a pickup like that, you don't really know what steps to take. You don't want to think you can do it all in-house at that pace either. So that's kind of what we're trying to put together. What we're going to talk about is just key points to make sure you're looking at. This is not going to be all-inclusive either, so it kind of pertains to your system. I'm more than happy to talk to you throughout the next couple days as well after this. But of course, as you get a developer coming in and you're working with them, step one is just find out what you're working with. So we try to push the non-standard service agreement. If it's a standard service agreement, it's your residential 3/4 by 5/8 meter. If it's anything else, it is a non-standard service agreement. So it could be a gas station. It could be they want a 1-inch meter because they have a larger facility or a lot going on, or a barn in the back, or anything outside of just your standard service. Utilize the non-standard service agreement. We actually make a template for that, template tariff and district policies at TRWA that are for free to use. And I believe TCEQ has some templates for tariffs and things as well. So looking at that information just to figure out which kind of service agreement you're going to use. Of course, here's a flow chart that I pulled from, I think it was Consolidated WSC. I utilized about 6 or 7 different water supply systems to come up with what they're doing, seeing all this growth. So I'm kind of have to give all the credit to them and not for me. All I did was put it together. But finding out where you're going from there. If it is non-standard, of course, then you got to find out, is it commercial? Is it going to be divided up? What the water demand is? But you start with some kind of flow chart. Is it commercial or not? Is it standard service or is it non-standard? Second would be you go to your policies. We get questions all the time about what do we do in this case? What do the rules say about this? Look at your tariff. Look at your district policies. Typically, it's all covered in there. If you haven't updated that since the beginning of your utility system, you should take a peek at that because things have changed. Once again, we do have templates that are for free that you're able to get on our website, and we would rather you have them and have the most current information than still have the same tariff or same district policies from the 70s. A lot of things have changed, even down just to the lead service line, making sure the lead rules are updated in your service agreements, making sure you have the right easements, the right language in there. So look at your policies, look at your rules. That's the second spot. So start off with what do you have, and then what do your rules say? And then, of course, you go to investigating. The toolkit comes with just a regular service request form, so a work order, as you normally have, a checklist for developers, things to make sure that they're giving you, that they don't miss a step, the hydraulic investigation report or engineering study, or I've heard different names for this thing, but basically what you're going to hand the information to an engineer. And it doesn't matter what you say or think about engineers, but they're necessary, okay? They need to be able to look at this and see what the water demand is going to be and how you're going to have to adjust. How is it going to be applicable to your utility? There's too many times I've seen in small systems where they think, I don't mind adding this new subdivision. I can run a 4-inch line myself and do that. Are they really going, are they checking the topography? Are they looking at the geographic area? Are they checking the topography? Are they looking at the geographic area? We're looking at the terrain in there. Is it all rock? What do we have to do? Do we have the capacity, the storage, the pumping? That's why engineers need to look at this and do a study. So we have just a basic check form for that. The standard service agreement, easement considerations, and then the consolidated WSC, they actually put together a return on investment calculator. So whenever you run into a situation to where, say, a developer is wanting to put something in, but you're wanting to upsize it a little bit more for your benefit as a utility, you can put in some information to see how long is it going to take for you to get your portion back out of it. So it was kind of a neat little tool that Mastelli, the GM over there, put together for that. And then, of course, we have some different resources, frequently asked questions, things that some of the engineers that I worked with put together for us too. So start from the beginning. Service request. When you get someone to come in, they need service. Again, standard or non-standard. Have someone go out. You can do a lot of, you can kick off kind of the riffraff right at the beginning. If you're going out there and you find out that it has nothing to do with your area, you don't service this area, that may be able to deter people right off the bat. If you know that you don't have a line within miles, and you let them know that it's going to take 2 miles of pipeline to get that. And I don't know a cost, but I can tell you it's going to be expensive. So there could be just some initial thoughts and some investigation processes to give the information. Is it going to be a road bore? What kind of highways are we going under? Is there going to be TxDOT permits? So you're looking at all the conditions. Your operator can go out there and give basic information of what you're going to start working with, and possibly give a developer, is it worth it or not? And if they want to continue, that's fine. But you give them some basics. And then you work for the checklist, and that gives all the applicant information, who you're working with. In case you didn't know, not always, not every time is it the developer the same person as the landowner. The landowner may own the 1,000 acres. The developer is someone they hired to make the profit out of it. So you need to make sure who you're talking to, who has the responsibility to answer the questions that you're going to need, who's signing off on the check when it comes down to that time. So making sure you're getting all the applicable information. Your service area verification, you know it's in your CCN. We'll talk about a little bit more of that in the next slide. But the engineering investigation, the compliance as far as in your counties, and we'll get into some of those details as well. But this checklist has a variety of things in here to consider when a developer comes in. So service area verification. If you've ever been on PUC's website, the PUC map viewer, that's like that's the where to go as far as your CCN. If you have a different version, maybe you have one on your wall back from the 80s, PUC is going to have the most current and the one that they are going to use to verify if that's your service area or not. So you need to check that. If it is out of date, you need to update that. They have an application process for it. So going through that, they're going to need map details. They're going to need very specific information of what you're trying to change or update. But whether it's partially or in whole, you can service that area. And actually, if it's in your CCN and you have a CCN, you're obligated to do so. A lot of the cities don't have one. You're not necessarily required to. You may have an ETJ or something like that. The WSCs and different kind of organizations have to have a coverage area. And again, if the utility or the requester is within that area, you have to at least give them an opportunity. You can say, we can supply you. It may cost $1 million to do this, though. But you have to say basically yes. If it's outside of your CCN, then they need to see where it actually is. If it's in someone else's, if it's a nearby city or someone else's coverage area, they need to start there. Now, we have seen utilities say that they don't have lines anywhere near the area. We're willing to give that piece up if you can service them. So you have to make those agreements between you, the developer, and the other CCN holders. So they can go back and forth. But this is a good spot to where you have your engineer get involved. You don't want to do all this by yourself. There's a lot of boxes to check. There's a lot of things to verify. Getting your parcel information. So once you're finding out which piece of property they're actually going to work on, you need a 911, a physical address. Where's this piece going to be? This is actually my personal property here, and there's nothing pertinent on there, so you can see we don't live in anything fancy, is what you can tell. But what is the intended use of that property going to be? Is it going to be a water park? Is it going to be one facility and it's all ranch land? Are they dividing it into a 3,000 lot subdivision? They have to be able to give you that intended use, and that's the part of the service agreement. If they change that, then there is a breach of contract, so to speak. If they're telling you, I'm only putting in 10 houses, and then they build or plat something for 100, you weren't prepared for that. You didn't quote for that. So all the information needs to be correct on what their intended use was. Having a plat or a site plan, a lot of counties now are getting involved, which I'm glad to see in an extent. The utility that I live on actually just a couple of years ago started getting involved with developers coming in. They wanted to see that there's actually going to be water servicing in that area, because some of you may unfortunately have had some situations, people buying from out of state, buying land, sight unseen, come out here to find out that there's not water available nowhere. There's even been houses being built. So since then, a lot of things have changed. Counties got involved. There's now legislation that has to be shown that there's water available. But a lot of counties are making utilities sign off that there is at least water available. I see a lot of counties still working out the details of how that's supposed to pan out, because a lot of them are actually wanting the utility to go ahead and say that they can service so many up to so many years. And you can't really commit to that. If something else happens, that's taken away from your capacity. So there's still some juggling going on, but a lot of the counties are getting more involved with working with utilities to making sure that the plat is something that they can service and that you can service with water. The service investigation from the engineer. So I have seen situations to where you send a piece of paper, or you just call and say, someone wants to add in 20 houses over here on East Street. And they look at their map real quick and say, yep, good to go. That's their service investigation. I would suggest that if that is your case, maybe find another engineer. We need something in writing. We need some paperwork. We need to know what's the storage capacity, what's the hit going to be on your pumping, what is the line size, what's the updates. You need something to show that they've put in some work into this, especially because you're getting paid for it. You should have a fee associated with doing an engineering study. They're going to take most of your fee, but there may be a portion of it that actually goes to you for admin fees, for admin costs, doing the paperwork, collecting this data for your engineer. Just keeping in mind, though, any fee you charge needs to be in your policies, in your rates, in your tariff, and things like that. But average fees, I have seen anywhere from $1,500. I've seen some that are $5,000 for engineering fees. Anyone higher than that? No? Okay. So they range, and it depends. A lot of these engineers are actually saying they're about 8 to 10 weeks out of being able to get an engineering study done. So there's a timeline you have to work with to be able to get an answer back to a developer. But it's well worth it. You need to have the engineer to verify. And then that is your backup. You're not just being the mean guy to say it's going to cost this developer $500,000. It is some kind of documentation that they've done some analysis. There's been too many times we've seen a lot of rule systems say that we don't want to see growth, so we're going to say that it's $2 million. You can't justify that. Don't do that. That's why we have these terrible legislation years where it's 900 water bills. It's because we do stuff like that. So use an engineer, have some justification for what your reasoning and your costs are going to be. Capital investment fees, I've seen this go a couple different ways. So again, utilities don't want to see growth in the area. They will change up, they will try to charge every drop of it to an engineer. And in a lot of cases, that's how it should be. If they're going to bring it in, if they're going to put an impact on you, by all means, they should pay for every bit of it. There are some cases to where you can kind of weigh out the differences of what they're going to bring to the table versus what you're going to get from it in the end. So if they're building off-site facilities, if they're going to give you a 1 million gallon storage tank and 2 new wells, and then also give you 1,000 customers, and they're providing all of this for you at their cost, there are some opportunities to kind of weigh out the differences. Maybe you don't charge them the capital improvement fees. Maybe you do waive some of the impact. And there's ways the engineers can offset that. So if they've spent $200,000 in offset or off-site investments, maybe you take that from what the capital investment fees were going to equal, and then they pay the difference of it. So there's different ways of doing it, but the point being, don't always just go straight to we're going to charge them everything possible. What's going to end up happening is if you get some of these developers that are kind of ornery and really don't want to work with you in the first place, then we have that expedited decertification. They get out of your area, they drill their own system or their own well, they have their own utility. They'll work with someone else that can give them not only water, but wastewater also. So you want to kind of balance out what you're giving up versus what you're trying to ask for. So it's a sensitive case. Work with your engineer to see what's the best route for that. And I want to say that this last bullet here, pro rata reimbursement, small situations, small improvements, there's reasons for that. And that's where if a developer comes in, pays all this money, all this line upgrade, all these storage tanks, they say within so many years, if anyone else comes into the system, we get a portion of this money back because we've paid all this up front. That doesn't work really well in these big projects. It gets messy, and it's a lot of tracking, and it's unnecessary. Where this kind of works out is when you have Miss Smith that lives at the end of a dirt road, and her well's out, and she paid 20 grand to get this pipe ran to the end of the road so she can have water. As soon as she pays for it, and then her neighbors all of a sudden want to jump on the line right after she's paid for it, that's a good opportunity for one of those pro rata agreements to where whatever they're paying her back, because they were waiting on her to do that. So you got to watch for that. You always think that everyone has good intentions, but you can see it coming. So there are cases for that pro rata reimbursement. Large developments typically are not the way to go for that. Your membership fees, impact fees, typically when developers come in, membership is not something that they would pay. That's when the meter goes in, that's when the lot sells, the house is built, the homeowner at that point does that. All the capital investment fees now for getting that meter box set, getting the tap set on the property, that is for the developer. And then whenever you're developing or you're putting together these impact fees, make sure you're going by the meter equivalency. We still see that today just in rate setting, which is somewhat frustrating. If you have a 2-inch compound meter that's servicing a jail and they're paying $30 a month, just like Ms. Smith is for her residential meter, that's not how that works. You are losing money. They should be paying a commercial rate. A 2-inch meter is worth 8 connections. So it should be 2 times 30 is the base rate for the large meter. So if you don't know how that structure goes with your rates and you want some more information, by all means, please come talk to us. We'd love to come talk to you about rates and making sure that you're getting what you're supposed to be getting, because in those cases, the ones that are using the least amount of water are covering the ones that use the most. So be sure that you're doing it based on the equivalency rate. Capacity considerations. I have only really seen this in RV parks when that was a big situation a couple years ago. But whenever there is open lots, whenever there is a plat development and you have 100 spots, the capacity is probably going to be looked at, and TCQ's all in the room, so they can correct me and throw stuff at me if they'd like to. But I think the way it's viewed is that they know that there is capacity there. You have to have the capacity to serve that lot when a house shows up. So it doesn't mean that a meter box has to be on it. That's available spot for a meter box or a connection. So that can be counted. At least that's kind of the view of the RV parks or even marinas in some cases. They're going to count each one of those slips as a connection. So that's what they're going to base that rate off of or that meter size off of. So just keep that in mind. So TCEQ, there are certain situations to where you have to give notification to TCEQ. These are all in the 29039. So changes that increase or decrease production, treatment, storage capacity, any capacities to your system, changes to the disinfection process, if you're a surface or a GUI plant, changes to the disinfection type. So if you're going from a UV to RO to whatever the case may be, any disinfection type, you have to give notification and approval. When I say notification, that means also with approval. And then changes in the existing distribution system. So if you're increasing more than 10% the number of connections, in most cases these developers are doing every bit of that, if not more. If it results in the waste or the water system's inability to comply with compliance or capacity, so by adding this, if it puts you under your rates or over that 85%, there has to be approval for this. And of course, if it involves the interconnection with another utility. So it's not every situation that when a developer comes in that you're going to have to go through TCEQ to get approval, but there are quite a few considerations. And again, using an engineer, they know that. So lean on them. If you don't have an engineer, there's a lot downstairs, I think. So go find one. Subdivision compliance, I touched on this a little bit with the counties. The counties are working working better now to making sure that the deeds are compliant, what they're going to develop is compliant. There's actually space for the septic systems going in. Is there going to be egress, ingress, egress? Is it landlocked, storm drainage? All of those things are considered, but they also want to know that you can provide them water. This is a touchy subject with some of the developments in some of the counties. I'll speak to the county I live in. There was a big situation with not wanting to use a water system that was in the area, service in that area, and instead they were going to do 10-acre tracts, and each one of them were going to have a well, and it was going to be 580 wells. So it seems like an okay way or a loophole to get around having to use a utility. Each one is private wells. It's all private landowners. They have their own little water system. It sounds great. Until you start considering that's 500 and something holes in the ground with 500 and something septic tanks right next to them, something is going to go wrong. And it's also going to be one big drawdown, all in one 600, 700 acre tract. So it's those kind of things that you want to try to deter from. If they don't want to pay, they don't want to play right with developers in the water system, then do what you have to do. But you're trying to deter from that kind of thinking. Easements and permits. Easements are a big deal. I used to work at a system to where when I showed up, all of our easements were filed in Walmart bags in the back closet. They were not filed at the courthouse. So as long as they got a signature, they thought they were done. We had to go back through for years trying to get people to re-sign. And if you ever had to get someone to re-sign a document, it's almost impossible. And there's nothing you can do to force them to do it. They already have service. So, if you're not filing at the courthouse, it never happened, just to let you know that. It took a lot of convincing to my board to let them understand that. So easements are important. Whether it's a blanket easement for the entire piece of property, that is great. If you can do that before it gets subdivided up, that is kind of a unique situation to where you can put lines where you need them based on the plat drawings. Or specific property easements, down the right side, so many feet off the street, from the curb, what have you. Easements are important. County easements going through construction permits, TxDOT, that is a fun process if you've never dealt with that. I have not done the Railroad Commission though. Has anyone had any work with the Railroad Commission right away?
Yeah, it's not fun.
No? If you compared it to TxDOT?
They're worse.
Worse, okay. Well, good. Yeah, I put them down the list. All right. And then proper filing, I already said this, just making sure that it actually goes somewhere else. It doesn't just get put in a drawer somewhere. So the easements are a big part of this. Again, developers know this. They know what processes are supposed to be done. If this is their first time, that's frightening, and sometimes you can tell it's their first one. They just bought a 10-acre piece of tract, and they think they're going to make millions because they see other people doing it. They don't know what they're getting into. So again, have some kind of consultant, engineer preferably, walking you through all these steps. And then finalizing the application, all things considered, the engineering study has been completed. Everything looks like it's copacetic. The capacity requirements are going to be in place. They've come up with an agreement. They're going to have to build a tank, include this line. Whatever the case may be, you're finalizing the application. You're going into the board, making sure that you have board approval. This is going to be a significant increase on the utility. This is going to change some things for the customer base itself. You're also typically, I have seen a lot of community meetings following some large developments because they want to know what that is going to do to the customers that you already serve. Is it going to impact their water supply? Is it going to impact their rates? Typically, I would say the new developer is paying for all of this. Your current customers, your current ratepayers should not be eating the cost of any of this. So that's why you got to go to the board. You got to have those conversations. And of course, you want to make sure that the plan's all laid out and there's nothing being missed. I guess some of this doesn't apply because I know we're not all WSCs. But depending on what kind of structure you are, of course, you go out for the bidding process. There are requirements of what you have to do, whether you're a WSC. You don't necessarily have to follow a lot of these steps as far as the requirements of the cost and how you do the bidding. But we always suggest that you follow the same process as we would tell the district to do. It's always just best practice. But there are limitations as far as the project cost and how you have to put out those bids. Whether you got to put it in the newspaper, whether it's going to be posted for 2 weeks, whether it's sealed bids, how many you get, the process, it's all in the rules. You need to make sure that you have someone looking through that. You don't want to miss a step. I haven't seen a case, but I'm pretty sure there's probably one in the room to where if you did miss a step, there is a contractor that's going to be upset. They didn't have an opportunity. It may have been a brother-in-law of one of the board members or something like that. So this is just where we live, and that's what happens. So be sure that you're following all the requirements. Selecting the contractor, I guess going back to the same brother-in-law situation. There's a lot of those. Just because someone you know has a backhoe doesn't mean they're a good contractor. There's a lot of lines in the utility. I'm going to keep saying the one I used to work for, and you realize I used to work for them. Not anymore. Contractors, same guy we used all through the system, apparently, ever since that system was put in. And no bedding, ever. The only bedding we ever had was large rocks. So we did a lot of leaks, but knowing who you're supposed to select, that was the only guy in town. You don't have to settle for something like that. Once you do your process for putting out bids for projects, for contracts, make sure you're doing your due diligence, your process to find a good contractor. Someone that has a good, reputable record. You don't necessarily have to go for the lowest, and I would suggest in most cases don't, because typically sometimes corners are going to be cut by doing that. So somewhere in the middle is a suggestion, but again, using your engineer, someone that has watched these contractors go through other projects before, it's good to have that kind of information, that historical knowledge to lean on. Looking for service bonds, they need to be bonded. They have providing a warranty. 2 years typically is the average on warranty of the work and on the parts. At this point, I think it was 1 year for a while, but things have stepped up a little bit. And then even selecting a contractor, a lot of these developers would like to be able to do all the work themselves. And in some cases, that's okay. If it's off-site facilities, meaning if it's going to be a new water tank and a new well for you, that would be off-site facilities. That needs to be designed, constructed, bid out, everything by your engineer. If it's the on-site and it's going to be for whatever's at that development, I would say that it's probably okay to have their engineer develop the plans for that. Their contractors can put it in, but with a third-party oversight, your engineer doing the investigating, the verifying, the depth, the bedding is done right. Make sure all the process is being done. There's inspections. So it kind of is a choice up to you whether you want to let them do that or not, but sometimes that can offset some of their costs, makes them a little happier. Just don't release it to them. Be sure that you're going to do the inspections. I kind of talked about this already. So have your project inspectors in place. Using your engineers is great. There are other companies that have a third party. That way you have another set of eyes. There's no bias. If your engineer designed this and he thinks it's great, and then you want a third party outside of that or outside of your utility, I would suggest not using one of your operators as the inspector. It's not going to be the same quality of work, and they don't have the history of looking for that kind of stuff. During your construction, make sure all line locates are done. I've seen a lot of projects go on to where the utility ends up getting bills for all the phone lines being cut because of the contractors. Typically, you can get that routed to where the contractor is responsible for that, but I have seen the bills go the other way around. So line locates need to be done. Again, inspect to make sure that's happening. Customer service, I don't know how many times y'all have had this done. I've been yelled at a lot for my contractors being on their property, knocking down trees, making a mess, leaving cigarette butts on the ground, whatever the case may be. So it's that oversight. Whoever you pick, someone needs to be there to make sure the project is being done correctly. And then safety on the job site. I don't know if y'all have noticed the picture. Does anybody see anything wrong with it? The shoring? Okay. I was just curious if we had some operators. Is anyone picking up on that? So, great picture. They were doing a good job. I'm just glad that it was all clay and nothing caved in. So, safety on the job site. You're not overseen by OSHA until something happens, right? And then something is going to happen as far as a utility being liable for something. So, just making sure the contractors know what they're doing. Closing out the project, again, following up with the customers. There is going to be settling. There is going to be cleanup to do later. It's not going to be fixed as soon as they're done. People just have to understand that. It's going to take some raining. It's going to take some settling. There are going to be ditches like this. Having a good contractor, having the warranty work, the bonds, all of that kind of stuff needs to be in place, that you have a good contractor for it. That way they do have scheduled cleanups, they do have a sign-off sheet once certain parts of the project are completed and they are defined as, I guess, administratively complete. So all the paperwork is done, and then all the finished product is done. Your engineer can sign off that they can get paid for that portion, or by the whole project based on how the contract is structured. And then your non-standard service agreements, I'm not going to really go through this. Again, when you go through a non-standard, it's not going to be your same typical one-pager, two-pager as a residential. You got to know what their demand is, what the acreage is, the property size. Is it going to be a project that comes in phases? Are they going to do it all at one time? You got to be able to structure this out. If it's something large, typically it is phases, so you know that you can try to schedule and coordinate capacity. If they hit it all at one time and you add 1,000 customers overnight, that's going to create a problem. So just looking at your non-standard service agreement, making sure everyone is in agreement, the board, the engineer, and the developer. Looking for fire flow, that is a big thing nowadays. I don't know who all has gotten involved with that, but even in the rural areas, the counties with their, I guess, plat approvals, they're wanting to have fire flow. And we've been to a few different meetings, county commissioner meetings, to try to explain, as necessary as that may seem, and I understand completely the purpose of it, our business is to provide potable drinking water, first and foremost. And then we can do fire flow as long as the capacity is there and as long as someone's willing to pay for it. So just looking through all of that, making sure all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, so to speak. And with that, I'm actually going to close it up. We got like a few minutes for any questions. Thank you.
Yes, the question is on meter equivalent slide you showed. Is there a source for the meter equivalent, such as AWWA standards? And then secondary is RV park connection counts, and how that ties into connection counts with TCEQ capacities.
Yeah, so meter equivalency, yes, it is AWWA standard. It is also, the equivalency is listed. It is in 290, but I don't remember. I'm not good at the citation off my brain. I can find it, but it is referenced, let's put it that way. And I think it's in even one of the RG 146 or a PWS. So it is mentioned in TCQ, but it is AWWA standard. Yeah, and then also for the RV parks, there was regulation set to say it was an 8-to-1 variance. So at first it was a 1-to-1. So if you had 10 slots, it was 10 connections. Now it's 2, because 8 slots equal 1, and then you had 2 extras, which would be 1. So there is a difference on RV parks. That one is a done deal. Yeah. Yeah, no, my intention here was just to show that just because it's an empty lot with no meter on it, it's still a capacity consideration. Yeah.